Let's talk about one of the favorite coaching models for me, which is a model that I lovingly refer to as the Jiffy Lube model, but it really comes from the Heart of Coaching book from Thomas Crane. Now, to be honest, the way that I think about the model isn't quite the way Crane talks about it in his book. The way I like to think about it is and as you can see, hopefully on your screen right now, it's got kind of three parts. There's the beginning of a conversation, which is when you're finding a focus for the conversation. And then there's this loop that represents the learning that goes on, learning that is connected to the focus. So the focus gives way to learning. And then the learning gives way to the third movement, which is forwarding the action. And, a lot of coaching conversations just kind of meander. They don't have any real direction because you don't have a focus. So you want to find focus by asking questions like, what do you want to talk about today? What's your goal for that topic? What's your goal for our conversation? What's important about this topic to you? So it's really only when you get dialed in and have focus that you know how to kind of aim the learning. What is it that we need to evoke some awareness about in the conversation? And then with the learning loop, you can have a big loop where there's lots of learning and most of the conversation maybe is around learning. And this is where you explore options. You find out something new about the topic. You consider some different ways forward, not just options for actions, but sometimes what you're learning is, what's required of you, the client in terms of their growth and those kinds of things. So there's lots of different kinds of learning that can happen in a coaching conversation. And then what I love about this model is it says, hey, learning is great. It's necessary, but it's not the goal. You got to turn the learning into action. And so you got to forward the action. You're taking the awareness that has happened in that learning loop and you're moving it forward into the real world. I love the arrow on the end of this. It's saying, hey, the conversation exists for what happens after the conversation, which is the client taking some action that's connected to the learning, which is informed by the focus. So I tell you what you don't want to have happen in a coaching conversation. You don't want a conversation with no loop. A conversation with no loop is, you have a topic and then you just ask the person, well, what do you want to do about it? And you just immediately start trying to plan and strategize and move into action. No loop. The other thing you don't want to have happen in a coaching conversation is all loop. It's just like going in circles. It's navel gazing. It's just learning for the sake of learning. While that might be, gratifying and edifying and all that kind of stuff, it's not coaching. You got to translate that learning into action. Now, one more thing about this model, from my experience with it, is that a coaching conversation could, let's say it's an hour-long coaching conversation, you could have a conversation that 45 minutes is just getting to the focus. That's what's needed. That's the issue, the topic is so sort of cloudy for the person that getting to the focus is really the big benefit. Like, wow, once we got focus, the learning and the action can just really kind of come quickly from that. You have other conversations where the focus is clear coming in and maybe there's just a lot of learning. And because of all that learning, big learning loop, and then the last, 5 minutes is forwarding the action. And then there are other conversations where the majority of the energy and time are given to forwarding the action. It's really, there's been some learning related to the focus topic, but it's the way forward. It's removing the obstacles. It's coming up with the strategy. It's the accountability. It's all those sorts of things that really are kind of what's needed from the client. So I don't feel like it's got to be a perfectly balanced, 20 minutes in a 60-minute conversation. And it's a picture. It kind of represents real life, but it's not real life. But use this model to help you just envision and kind of get the feel for what a good coaching conversation is. And that way you'll be even more valuable to your clients.
Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any of our great content.